Story 1. Fog in the Hollow. The rain had been falling all morning, a steady drizzle that soaked my jacket and clung to my boots as I trudged into the forest. My name's Caleb, and I'd come to the Hollow, a dense, misty stretch of woods on the edge of town, to escape the noise in my head. Life had been unraveling lately, a dead-end job, a breakup that still stung, and sleepless nights that left me hollowed out. The woods promised quiet, a place to think. I carried a backpack with a tent, some food, and a flashlight, planning to camp by the river for a night or two. The air was heavy, the scent of wet pine and earth thick around me. Mist curled between the trees, softening their shapes, and the world felt muffled, like it was holding its breath. I found a clearing near the river, its current a low murmur beneath the patter of rain. Setting up my tent took longer than it should have. My fingers were cold, my mind distracted. But soon enough, I had a small fire crackling. The flames were a comfort against the gray, and I sat on a log, letting the warmth seep into my hands. That's when I saw her. Across the clearing, perched on a fallen branch, was a girl. She looked about my age, early 20s, with dark hair plastered to her face from the rain. A golden retriever sat at her feet, its fur damp, but its eyes bright. She waved at me, a small, friendly gesture. "Hey there," she called, her voice cutting through the drizzle. "Mind if I share your fire?" I hesitated. I'd come here for solitude, but something about her seemed safe. "Sure," I said, gesturing to the log across from me. "Plenty of room." She crossed the clearing, her dog trotting beside her. "I'm Emily," she said, settling down. "This is Finn." The dog wagged its tail, sniffing the air near the fire. Emily's smile was easy, but her eyes had a strange intensity, like she was studying me. We talked for a while. Small things at first, like the weather, the river, the way the forest seemed to swallow sound. She said she came out here often, knew the woods better than most. "There's something special about this place," she said, leaning forward. "It shows you things, if you let it." I wasn't sure what she meant, but I nodded. The fire popped, sending sparks into the mist. As dusk fell, the rain stopped, and the forest grew darker, the trees looming like silent sentinels. Emily's dog, Finn, perked up, ears twitching. "He hears something," she said, her voice low. "Want to see something weird?" Curiosity got the better of me. "What kind of weird?" She grinned, a glint in her eye. "Follow me." We left the fire, Finn leading the way through the underbrush. The mist thickened as we walked, the air cool and damp against my skin. Emily moved with purpose, like she knew exactly where she was going. After a few minutes, we reached a massive oak, its roots sprawling like veins across the ground. At its base, glowing faintly in the twilight, were mushrooms, small, pale caps that pulsed with an eerie bluish light. "Found these last year," Emily said. "They only glow at night. Cool, right?" I crouched, staring at the toadstools. They shimmered, almost alive, their light casting strange shadows on the tree's bark. "Are they safe?" I asked. Emily laughed, plucking one and twirling it between her fingers. "Safe enough. Ever tried roasting them?" She didn't wait for an answer, pulling a small metal pipe from her pocket. She crumbled a few mushrooms, packed them into the pipe, and lit it with a match. The smoke smelled sharp, like damp earth and something sweeter. She took a puff, then offered it to me. "Live a little, Caleb." I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was the strangeness of the night, or the way Emily's eyes seemed to dare me. I took a drag, the smoke burning my throat. It didn't take long for the world to shift. Colors bled together, the trees bending like they were breathing. Emily's laughter echoed, too loud, too close. Finn's fur glowed golden, his eyes like twin moons. We sat under the oak, passing the pipe, the forest spinning around us. The mushroom's light pulsed in time with my heartbeat. I don't know how long we stayed there, lost in the haze. But at some point, I blinked, and the world snapped into focus. It was darker now, the fire back at camp long gone out. A thick fog had rolled in, so dense I could barely see Emily sitting a foot away. My head throbbed, my thoughts sluggish. "What time is it?" I mumbled. Emily checked her watch, her face pale in the gloom. 3 a.m. Her voice was tight, like she'd just realized something. Finn was gone. She stood, scanning the fog. "Finn! Finn!" Her shout was swallowed by the mist. I heard a faint bark, distant and confused, somewhere deeper in the woods. "We have to find him," she said, her voice cracking. I nodded, my legs unsteady as I stood. The fog was like a living thing, curling around us, muffling our steps. We called for Finn, our voices bouncing back in strange echoes, like the forest was mocking us. The trees seemed to shift, their shapes twisting in the haze. Every path we took looped back to the same spot, the same gnarled oak with its glowing mushrooms. My chest tightened, the air too thick to breathe. "Finn!" Emily shouted again, her voice raw. I saw something move in the fog, a shadow, low to the ground. "There!" I pointed, stumbling toward it, but when we reached the spot there was nothing, just more mist. My heart pounded, the world tilting. Emily grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Something's wrong," she whispered. "This isn't right." We kept moving, shouting for Finn, but the forest felt alive, hostile. The ground was uneven, roots snagging my boots. At one point I tripped, falling hard against a tree. My hand brushed something smooth and cold in the dirt, a bone, long and thin, half buried. I yanked my hand back, my stomach churning. "Emily, look at this," I said. But when I turned, she was gone. "Emily!" I shouted, my voice breaking. "Emily!" The fog swallowed my words. I stumbled forward, panic clawing at my chest. The mushroom's glow seemed to follow me, flickering in the corners of my vision. Then I saw them, yellow eyes, dozens of them, hovering in the fog at the height of the trees. They weren't human, weren't animal. They just watched, unblinking, their light cutting through the mist like knives. I ran. Branches tore at my clothes, my breath ragged. The eyes followed, silent, relentless. I tripped again, my knee slamming into the ground. My hand landed on something sharp, a jagged bone protruding from the soil. I scrambled back, my pulse roaring in my ears. The bone was human, unmistakably so, its surface slick with mud. I didn't stop to think, I just ran. The eyes trailing me, the fog pressing in. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time didn't make sense anymore. The fog began to thin as dawn broke. The first rays of light filtering through the trees. I heard the river, faint but real, and followed its sound. My leg was screaming, a sharp pain shooting through my shin with every step. I didn't care. I just wanted out. When I stumbled into a clearing, I saw the road. A passing trucker found me, half conscious, my clothes torn and my legs swollen. He drove me to the hospital where they set my fractured tibia and asked too many questions. I told them about Emily, about Finn, about the fog and the eyes. They didn't believe me, of course. They said I'd been alone, that the mushrooms were toxic, that I'd hallucinated the whole thing, but I knew better. I went back to the woods a week later, against the doctor's orders, with Emily's father, a man I'd tracked down through missing persons reports. He was gaunt, his eyes red from grief. We found the clearing where I'd camped. The tent was still there, untouched, but Emily's camp was gone. In its place was a patch of disturbed earth, soft and muddy. We dug, not knowing what we'd find. The bones were small, delicate. A dog's, the police said later. Fins. But there was something else, a locket, half buried, with a photo of Emily inside. Her father broke down, clutching it. "She's been gone a year," he said, his voice hollow. "Disappeared in these woods. We never found her." The police came, combed the area. They found more bones, human, scattered, too old to be recent. They wouldn't say whose. They told me Emily had been out here alone a year ago to the day. She'd eaten those mushrooms, they said, and wandered off, lost in her own mind. They called it an accident, a tragedy. But I know what I saw. The yellow eyes weren't a hallucination. They were real, just like Emily's voice, her laugh, the way she looked at me under that tree. The mushrooms glowed, and so did she, her eyes burning into mine. The forest took her, and it almost took me. I don't go back to the hollow anymore, but at night, when the air is still, I swear I hear barking, faint and far away, calling me back to the fog. Story 2. My name is Nathan Solomon, but everyone calls me Nate. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to tell a story like this, one that keeps you up at night, questioning what's real. But after what happened to me in those woods, I don't have a choice. I need to get this out, to make sense of it, or maybe just to warn you. It started with a car accident, a stupid mistake on a back road in the middle of nowhere. Now, I'm not sure I'll ever escape the fog that chased me. It was late, probably around midnight, when I was driving home from a long shift at the warehouse. The road was a winding, narrow strip cutting through dense forest, no streetlights, just my headlights slicing through the dark. I was exhausted, my eyes heavy, and I'll admit I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been. A deer darted across the road, and I swerved hard, too hard. My car spun out, tires screeching, and slammed into a tree. The airbag hit me like a punch, and everything went black. When I came to, my head was throbbing, and the dashboard was a mess of cracked plastic. My phone was dead, screen shattered. I stumbled out of the car, my legs shaky, and realized I was alone in the dark. The forest loomed around me, trees stretching endlessly into the night. I figured I'd walk until I found a signal or a house, anything. But the air was wrong, thick, damp, like breathing through a wet cloth. A fog had rolled in, so dense I could barely see 10 feet ahead. I started walking, my boots crunching on gravel, then leaves, as the road seemed to vanish beneath me. Hours passed, or what felt like hours. The forest never changed. Same gnarled trees, same underbrush, same suffocating fog. It was like I was walking in circles. But I swore I was going straight. My heart started to race, not from exertion, but from the creeping realization that something was off. I stopped to catch my breath, leaning against a tree when I heard it. A low hum, like a distant engine, but softer, almost alive. It came from the fog itself, vibrating through the air, growing louder, closer. My skin prickled. I didn't know what it was, but every instinct screamed to move. I ran. Branches clawed at my face, roots tripped me, but I didn't stop. The hum grew into a pulsating drone, like a swarm of bees circling me. The fog seemed to thicken, pressing against me, and I could swear it moved, rippling like water. I tripped, face planting into a pile of dry leaves, my hands scraping against the ground. As I scrambled up, a hand grabbed my shoulder and shoved me back down. "Stay down, friend. Just let it drift on by," a voice whispered, low and urgent. I froze, heart pounding. A man crouched beside me, his face half hidden in the shadows. He wore a ranger's uniform, the kind you see in national parks, with a name tag that read Tucker. His eyes were sharp, scanning the fog, and his hand stayed firm on my shoulder, pinning me to the ground. Above us, the fog glowed faintly, like it was lit from within, and the hum was deafening now. I saw shapes in the mist, tendrils almost like fingers, curling and uncurling. It was alive, or something close to it. "Don't move," the ranger whispered. "It'll pass." I didn't argue. I lay there, face in the dirt, listening as the hum faded, the glow dimming until the forest was silent again. The ranger helped me up, his grip strong but not rough. "You're lucky I found you," he said. "Name's Maxwell Tucker, but folks call me Tuck. You're Nate, right?" I nodded, too shaken to ask how he knew my name. "What was that?" I managed, my voice hoarse. Tuck's face darkened. "Locals call it the Gray. It's not natural. Likes to play with folks who get lost out here. We've saved a few, but most don't make it." I wanted to laugh it off, call him crazy, but I'd seen it. The way the fog moved, the way it hummed. It wasn't just weather. Tuck motioned for me to follow him, and I did, because what else could I do? We walked deeper into the woods, the fog still thick, but less suffocating now. Tuck moved like he knew every tree, every root, but his eyes kept darting to the shadows. He told me the Gray wasn't just mist. It was something old, something that fed on fear, on people who wandered too far from the path. "It's been here longer than the town," he said, "longer than any of us." I didn't want to believe him, but the forest felt wrong, like it was watching us. The trees seemed to lean closer, their branches sharper in the dim light. We walked for what felt like miles, my legs burning, my head still pounding from the crash. Then the hum came back, louder, angrier. The fog thickened, and I saw it again, those tendrils slithering between the trees like snakes. Tuck grabbed my arm. "Run!" he shouted. We sprinted, the ground uneven beneath us. The trees seemed to move, roots twisting up to trip us, branches snapping at our clothes. The Gray was everywhere, closing in, its tendrils brushing my skin cold and slick like oil. I could feel it in my head, a pressure, like it was trying to get inside. Tuck kept pulling me forward, his breath ragged, but his pace relentless. "Don't let up. We can make it," he yelled. We reached a clearing, a fallen log blocking our path. The fog was so thick I could barely see Tuck, but I heard his voice, strained and desperate. "I'm sorry, Nate. I can't go no further with you." Before I could react, he shoved me hard through a gap in the fog. I stumbled, falling forward, and heard a scream, raw, tortured, not entirely human. A bright glow lit up the forest behind me, then darkness. I woke up in a hospital bed, my head bandaged, my leg in a cast. My parents were there, tears in their eyes, saying they'd found me on the side of the road, unconscious but alive. I asked about Tuck, the ranger who saved me, but the nurse gave me a strange look. Later, a ranger from the local station visited. When I mentioned Maxwell Tucker, his face went pale. "Tucker, Maxwell Tucker, Ranger Tuck. He said he worked with us 15 years ago. Died in the line of duty. I didn't believe it. I couldn't. As soon as I was well enough, I went back to those woods. I found the ranger station, a small building at the edge of the forest, and met Assistant Ranger Angie Temple. She was kind but guarded, like she'd seen too much. When I told her about Tuck, she took me to a small cemetery on a hill nearby. There, among weathered gravestones, was one that stopped my heart. Maxwell Tucker, 1956 to 2007. Angie told me the story. 15 years ago, Tuck and she had responded to a call about a girl held hostage on that same road. A man named Jeremiah Gray, a killer with a sick obsession, had her trapped. Tuck ran in to save her, taking bullets and triggering an explosion that consumed Gray in a fireball. The killer's body was never found, just plumes of thick white smoke rising from the wreckage. Angie's voice shook as she said, "Some folks think Gray's still out there in the fog, that he became something else." I didn't know what to say. I'd felt the Gray, seen it move, heard its hum. And Tuck, he'd been there, real as anything, saving me. I went back to the woods alone that night, standing where my car had crashed. The fog was there, lurking, but it didn't hum, didn't move. I whispered Tuck's name, half expecting an answer, but there was only silence. I'm a ranger now, like Tuck. I patrol those woods, keeping an eye on the fog. I tell myself I'm honoring him, the man who pulled me out of the Gray's grasp. But sometimes at night, when the mist rolls in, I hear that hum again, low, distant, waiting. And I wonder if Tuck's still out there, fighting it, or if I'm just another lost soul the Gray hasn't finished with yet. Story 3. The Curse of Elias White. My name is Clara, and I'm not sure why I'm writing this down. Maybe it's to warn you. Maybe it's to make sense of what happened to me in those woods. My hands shake as I hold this pen, and my eyes, God, my eyes, still burn with that unnatural white glow when I catch my reflection. It started as a dare, a stupid game to test a legend, but the forest around Bass Lake doesn't play games. It keeps what it takes. It was late summer, the air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. My friends, Jake, Mia, and Sam, had heard the story of Elias White 100 times, just like I had. A runaway slave, caught and hanged in the Misty woods long ago. His final words, a curse. The forest keeps what it takes. We were locals, raised on campfire tales about flickering lights and whispers in the fog. We laughed it off, called it a ghost story for kids. But Jake, always the instigator, suggested we go into the woods at night to prove it was nonsense. "Let's find Elias," he said with a grin, tossing a flashlight in the air. None of us wanted to look like cowards, so we agreed. We met at the edge of Bass Lake just after sunset. The water was still, reflecting the last streaks of orange in the sky. The forest loomed ahead, a wall of pines swallowed by a creeping fog. My stomach twisted as we stepped onto the trail, but I pushed it down. It was just a hike, I told myself, just a story. The first hour was uneventful. We joked, our flashlights cutting through the mist. Sam teased Mia about jumping at every rustle, and Jake led the way, pretending to be some fearless explorer. But the deeper we went, the quieter it got. The usual sounds, crickets, owls, the hum of the forest, faded. It was like the air itself was holding its breath. The fog thickened, curling around the trees like fingers. Our flashlights barely pierced it, the beams scattering into pale halos. Anyone else feel like it's getting colder? Mia whispered, pulling her jacket tighter. She was right. The temperature had dropped sharp and unnatural. My breath hung in the air and my skin prickled. Jake shrugged it off, but I saw his eyes dart to the shadows. The trail, which had been clear at the start, was harder to follow now. Roots seemed to twist underfoot, and the path curved in ways that didn't make sense. Then we heard it, a whisper, faint but unmistakable, carried on the wind. The forest keeps what it takes. My heart stopped. We froze, our flashlights sweeping the trees. Nothing, just fog and silence. Probably the wind, Jake said, but his voice cracked. Mia grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. Sam, usually the skeptic, was pale, his flashlight trembling. "Let's keep moving," I said, though my legs felt like lead. We pressed on, but the whisper came again, closer this time, like someone was standing just out of sight. The forest keeps what it takes. It wasn't the wind, it was a voice, raspy and ancient, like dead leaves scraping across stone. My chest tightened, and I wanted to run, but the trail was gone. The trees pressed closer, their branches clawing at the fog. "Guys," Sam said, his voice barely a whisper, "where's the path?" We spun around, flashlights darting. The trail we'd been following had vanished, swallowed by the undergrowth. Panic set in. Mia's breathing was ragged, and Jake cursed under his breath, swinging his light in every direction. The fog was so thick now it felt like a living thing, wrapping around us, muffling our voices. That's when we saw it, a figure just beyond the trees. It was tall, hooded, its outline blurred by the mist. Its eyes, God, those eyes, glowed an unnatural white, like twin moons in the darkness. My blood turned to ice. Mia screamed, and the sound seemed to echo forever, swallowed by the forest. The figure didn't move, just stood there, watching. "What do you want?" Jake shouted, his voice breaking. The figure tilted its head, and that voice came again, low and grating. "To see what you've seen." My knees buckled. The words weren't just sound. They crawled into my head, heavy and cold, like they were carving themselves into my mind. The figure stepped forward, and we stumbled back. My flashlight flickered, then died. Sam's went out next, then Mia's. Only Jake's beam held, weak and trembling. The figure was closer now, its hooded face hidden except for those burning eyes. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't move. It was like the forest itself was holding me in place, roots curling around my soul. Then it was gone. The figure vanished into the fog, and the air loosened like a fist unclenching. We ran, crashing through the underbrush, branches tearing at our clothes. I don't know how long we stumbled through the dark, but eventually we saw a faint light ahead, the edge of the forest. We collapsed at the lake shore, gasping, shaking. Dawn was breaking, the sky pale and gray. We were alive, but we weren't the same. When the search party found us, we couldn't speak. My throat felt raw, like I'd been screaming all night, though I didn't remember it. My friends were the same, pale, hollow-eyed, their faces drained of color, and our eyes, they were wrong. In the reflection of the lake, I saw it. My irises, once brown, were now a ghostly white, glowing faintly in the dim light. Mia's were the same. So were Jake's and Sam's. We didn't talk about it. We couldn't. Days passed, but the forest didn't let go. At night, I heard the whisper in my dreams. The forest keeps what it takes. I'd wake up sweating, my eyes burning, the room too dark, like the fog had followed me home. I started seeing things, shadows moving in the corners, a hooded figure just beyond my window. My friends reported the same. Mia stopped leaving her house. Sam started sketching the figure obsessively, his drawings littered with those glowing eyes. Jake, always the brave one, tried to go back to the woods to face it. He didn't come back. A week later, I found a note slipped under my door. It was in Jake's handwriting, but the words didn't sound like him. It sees what we see. It knows what we know. My stomach churned. I burned the note, but the words stayed with me. That night, the whispers were louder, closer, like they were coming from inside my house. I locked my doors, closed my curtains, but it didn't matter. The fog was back, seeping under the cracks, filling my room with its cold, heavy presence. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the wall, waiting for the figure to appear. Hours, maybe, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt it, watching me, not from outside, but from inside. My reflection in the mirror moved when I didn't, its white eyes staring back, unblinking. I screamed and smashed the mirror, but the shards showed the same thing. Those eyes, glowing, accusing. I went to find Mia and Sam. Mia was catatonic, sitting in her room, staring at nothing. Her eyes were brighter now, almost blinding. Sam was worse. His sketches covered the walls, hundreds of them, all of the hooded figure, its eyes like twin voids. "It's in us," he whispered, not looking at me. "It's always been in us." We tried to leave town, thinking distance would break the curse. We drove for hours, the road stretching endlessly through the pines. But the fog followed. It rolled over the highway, thick and suffocating, until we couldn't see the road anymore. The car stalled, and the whispers came again, louder, overlapping, a chorus of dead voices. The forest keeps what it takes. I don't know how we got back to Bass Lake, but we did. The car was parked at the forest's edge, like we'd never left. Now I'm back in my room writing this. My eyes burn brighter every day, and the whispers never stop. I see the figure everywhere, in the shadows, in my dreams, in the faces of strangers. It's not just watching anymore, it's waiting. For what? I don't know. But I feel it like a weight on my chest, a pull back to the woods. Last night, I found another note, not in Jake's handwriting this time. It was my own, though I don't remember writing it. To see what you've seen. My reflection smiled at me from the window, but I wasn't smiling. The forest doesn't let go. It keeps what it takes, and it's taken me. If you're reading this, stay away from Bass Lake. Don't test the legend, because once you see those eyes, they see you too, and they never stop. Story 4, The Withering Woods. My name is Sergeant Walter Locklear, and this is the account of what happened to me in June 1956, in the fog-choked forests of France during the waning days of the war. I've tried to forget, to bury it deep, but the memory clings like damp rot. The things I saw in those woods, they don't let go. They never will. It was a gray morning, the kind where the air feels heavy, like it's pressing down on your shoulders. My unit, a ragged band of soldiers, was moving through a dense forest near the front lines. We'd been under fire for days, the crack of rifles and the thud of mortars a constant rhythm. That morning, the enemy hit us hard. Bullets tore through the underbrush, and in the chaos my unit scattered like leaves in a storm. I ran, heart pounding, lungs burning, diving into a pale fog that had rolled in from nowhere. It was thick, unnatural, curling around the trees like ghostly fingers. I thought it would hide me. I was wrong. At first, The fog was a blessing. It muffled the sounds of gunfire, gave me cover as I darted from tree to tree. The forest was silent, save for the faint rustle of leaves underfoot and the whisper of wind through the branches. But as I pressed deeper, something felt off. The trees, they weren't right. Their bark, usually rough and dark, was pale and smooth, almost flesh-like. I brushed my hand against one, and it felt warm, pliable, like skin stretched over bone. My stomach churned, but I told myself it was just the stress, the adrenaline playing tricks. I kept moving, my rifle clutched tight, my breath shallow. The fog grew thicker, so dense I could barely see 10 feet ahead. The air turned heavy, carrying a sour metallic tang that coated my tongue. Then I heard it, a faint agonized scream, so soft at first I thought it was my imagination. It came again, sharper, from somewhere deeper in the woods. My skin prickled. I told myself it was a wounded soldier, maybe one of ours, but the sound wasn't right. It was too high, too broken, like a child's voice twisted in pain. I pushed forward, my boots sinking into the soft earth. The screams grew louder, more frequent, echoing through the fog from all directions. My heart raced, but I couldn't stop. I had to know what was out there. Then my foot caught on something, and I stumbled, crashing to my knees. I looked down, expecting a root, but what I saw froze the blood in my veins. It wasn't a root. It was a human femur, bleached white and jutting from the mud like some grotesque plant. I scrambled back, my hands sinking into the cold, wet earth, and that's when I saw her. She was lying face up on the forest floor, a young girl, no older than 12. Her skin was gray, marred with dark, jagged wounds, her mouth frozen in a wordless scream. Her clothes were tattered, barely clinging to her frail frame. I stared, unable to move, as her cloudy eyes snapped open and locked onto mine. There was no life in them, just a hollow, endless terror. My breath caught my throat, and I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't obey. Then I saw them. More bodies, children and teenagers, standing upright around every tree. They were mangled, their limbs twisted at unnatural angles, their flesh gray and torn. Each one was chained to a tree, the rusted links biting into their skin, half submerged in the earth as if the forest itself had grown around them. Their heads turned toward me, slow and deliberate, their eyes glowing faintly in the fog. One by one, they opened their mouths, and a deafening hollow scream tore through the air. It wasn't human. It was a sound that clawed at my soul, rattling my bones, making my vision blur. I stumbled back, my rifle shaking in my hands, and that's when I saw it, a tall, shadowy figure stepping from the fog. It was impossibly gaunt, its frame skeletal beneath a tattered black cloak that billowed without wind. Curved horns jutted from its head, sharp and gleaming like polished bone. Its face was hidden in shadow, but I could feel its eyes on me, burning with a malice that made my skin crawl. I raised my rifle and fired twice, the shots muffled, swallowed by the fog. The bullets passed through the creature like it was made of smoke. It didn't flinch. It didn't slow. In a heartbeat, it lunged. Its clawed arm plunged into my chest, and pain exploded through me, sharp and searing, like fire racing through my veins. My uniform burst into flames, bright and unnatural, licking at my skin but not burning it. In my pocket, the old coin I carried, a family heirloom passed down for generations, grew scalding hot. I screamed, clawing at my chest, and the creature recoiled, hissing as if the coin's heat repelled it. For a moment, the pain eased, and I heard a woman's voice, distant but clear, calling my name. "Walter," it said, soft but urgent, like a lifeline pulling me from the dark. I dragged myself to my feet, the fog swirling around me, the screams of the chained children still echoing. The creature watched, its horns glinting in the dim light, but it didn't pursue. I stumbled through the forest, following the voice, my chest throbbing, my vision swimming. The trees loomed closer, their flesh-like bark pulsing faintly as if alive. I tripped again, this time over a pile of bones. More human remains, scattered like kindling. The screams grew louder, more desperate, and I could feel the creature's presence behind me, its shadow stretching across the ground. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes, hours. It all blurred together. The fog seemed to twist around me, guiding me deeper into the woods one moment, then pushing me toward the edge the next. The woman's voice called again, louder now, and I clung to it, letting it anchor me. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but I kept moving, dodging the pale trees, ignoring the screams that threatened to shatter my mind. Then, as suddenly as it began, the nightmare ended. The fog parted, and the trees were normal again. Rough bark, dark and ordinary. The screams faded, replaced by the distant chirp of birds. I collapsed at the edge of the forest, my chest heaving, my uniform singed but intact. The coin in my pocket was charred black, its once shiny surface dull and cracked. Dawn broke, gray and cold, and I heard the rumble of an Allied patrol approaching. They found me there, half-conscious, babbling about fog and screams and a horned creature. They didn't believe me, of course. They said I'd been delirious, that the stress of the firefight had broken me. But I knew what I'd seen. Days later, safe in a field hospital, I tried to make sense of it. The coin, that damned heirloom, had saved me somehow. I'd always thought it was just a trinket, something my grandfather carried for luck. But now, I wondered what it was, what power it held. The doctors said I'd imagined the creature, the children, the fog. They said it was trauma, exhaustion, maybe even poison gas, but I knew better. Those woods weren't just haunted, they were alive, hungry, and that creature was their master. I left the war not long after, my body intact, but my mind fractured. I never returned to those forests, but I carry them with me. Every time I hear a child scream on a misty day, I'm back there, running through the fog, feeling the weight of those hollow eyes. The coin sits in a box now, locked away, but I can still feel its heat sometimes, like a warning. The woods are still out there waiting, and I know one thing for certain. If I ever step into that fog again, I won't escape a second time. Story 5. The Legend of Elias White. I am Elias White, or what's left of me. Once a man of flesh and bone, now I'm something else. Bound to the fog-choked woods of Bass Lake, where the air clings like damp cloth and the trees whisper secrets they'll never share. My story isn't one of peace. It's a wound that festers, a wrong that won't rest. If you're reading this, you're already too close to the truth. The forest keeps what it takes, and it's taken me. Now, it might take you. Decades ago, time blurs in this endless dusk. I was a man running for freedom. My heart pounded louder than my bare feet against the earth as I fled through these woods. The night was thick with fog, the kind that swallows sound and sight. I thought I'd made it, that the shadows would hide me, but they came, men with torches and ropes, their faces twisted with hate. They caught me by the old oak, its branches clawing at the sky like it knew what was coming. They didn't speak as they tied the noose. My last breath was a scream. The forest keeps what it takes. I didn't know then how true those words would be. When my neck snapped, the world didn't end. It changed. I became part of this place, its roots, its mist, its hunger. My eyes, now glowing white, see everything the forest sees. I watch, I wait, and I speak through the wind. The forest keeps what it takes. Those who wander too far hear it. Some never leave. Years passed. How many, I can't say. The forest doesn't count time like men do. But one night, a group of teenagers came, their laughter cutting through the silence like a blade. 5 of them, armed with flashlights and bravado, stomping through the underbrush as if they owned it. I felt their steps on the soil, each one a pulse in my hollow chest. They'd heard the stories, my story, passed around campfires, twisted by time. They didn't believe. They thought it was a game. Elias White, just some old ghost tale, the tall one, Jake, scoffed. His voice was sharp, like he was daring the woods to prove him wrong. He led the group, his flashlight slicing through the fog. Behind him, Mia clutched her jacket, her eyes darting to the shadows. She was the quiet one, the one who felt the weight of the air. Then there was Tyler, always joking, his grin too wide. Sarah, with her quick steps and quicker temper, kept close to Jake. And Lucas, the smallest, trailed behind, his flashlight shaking in his hand. They followed the old path, the one that used to lead to the lake before the forest swallowed it. The deeper they went, the thicker the fog grew, curling around their ankles like it had hands. I watched from the spaces between the trees, my eyes flickering like twin moons. The air turned cold, sharp enough to sting their lungs. The trees leaned closer, their branches knitting together overhead. The path started to twist, doubling back on itself, though they didn't notice at first. "Where's the trail?" Sarah snapped, her voice louder than she meant. She spun, her flashlight beam jerking wildly. The path was gone, replaced by a tangle of roots and shadows. Tyler laughed, but it was thin, nervous. "It's fine, we just took a wrong turn." "There are no turns," Mia whispered. Her breath came out in a puff of frost, though it was summer. She stopped walking, her eyes fixed on something the others couldn't see. "Do you hear that?" They froze. Silence pressed down, heavy as stone. Then it came, a low, raspy whisper carried on the wind. "The forest keeps what it takes." It wasn't loud, but it filled the air, seeping into their bones. Lucas whimpered, his flashlight dropping to the ground. The beam flickered out, leaving them in near darkness. "Who's there?" Jake shouted, his voice cracking. He swung his light around, catching glimpses of bark and fog, but nothing else. The whisper came again, closer now, like it was circling them. "The forest keeps what it takes." Mia grabbed Jake's arm. "We need to go, now." But the forest had other plans. The fog thickened, swallowing their lights until they could barely see each other. Their footsteps echoed strangely, as if the ground was hollow. Tyler tried to joke, but his words died when he saw his own breath clouding in the air, colder than it should have been. I stepped closer, not in body, but in presence. The forest is my body now, its roots my veins, its shadows my skin. I stood between 2 gnarled pines, my white eyes burning through the mist. Lucas saw me first. He screamed, a raw animal sound, and pointed. The others turned, their faces pale as bone in the dim light. It was no man they saw, but a shape, tall, too thin, with a head that tilted unnaturally. My eyes glowed unblinking, and though I had no mouth to speak, the words came anyway. To see what you've seen. The voice was mine, but not mine, like leaves crunching underfoot, like wind through dead branches. Sarah stumbled back, tripping over a root. "What do you want?" she yelled, her voice shrill. I didn't answer. The forest answered for me, tightening its grip. The trees seemed to move, their trunks bending inward, their branches reaching. The fog pressed against their skin, cold and damp, like fingers brushing their necks. They ran. Flashlights bobbed wildly, beams cutting through the mist, but finding no path. The forest shifted around them, roots rising to trip their feet, branches snagging their clothes. Lucas fell, his ankle twisting with a sickening crack. Mia hauled him up, her face streaked with tears. "Keep moving!" she screamed, though she didn't know where to go. I followed, not chasing but gliding, my presence woven into the air they breathed. The whisper followed them. The forest keeps what it takes. It wasn't a threat. It was truth. The forest had taken me, and now it wanted them. They stumbled into a clearing, or what they thought was a clearing. The fog was thinner here, but the trees were taller, their branches forming a cage overhead. In the center stood the old oak, the one where I had died. Its bark was black, its limbs twisted like they were screaming. Jake stopped, his chest heaving. "This isn't right," he said. "We've been here before." They had. The forest looped them back, a spider spinning its web. Tyler spun around, his flashlight catching something in the trees, a flicker of white, like eyes. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came. The air was too thick, too heavy. It pressed against their chests, stealing their breath. I appeared again, closer now, standing at the edge of the clearing. My form was clearer, tattered clothes, a rope shadow around my neck, my eyes like lanterns in the dark. "To see what you've seen," I said again, the words curling through the fog. Sarah grabbed a branch, holding it like a weapon. "Stay back," she shouted, but her voice shook. Lucas was crying now, clutching Mia's arm. "I don't want to die," he whispered. Mia's eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw something in her, understanding maybe, or fear so deep it became something else. She didn't scream. She just stared, her lips moving silently, as if trying to find words that wouldn't come. The forest tightened its grip. The fog swirled, forming shapes, hands, faces, eyes. The trees groaned, their roots shifting beneath the ground. Jake tried to run again, but the ground seemed to tilt, throwing him to his knees. Tyler swung his flashlight like a club, shouting nonsense to keep the fear at bay. But fear was all they had now. I didn't move. I didn't need to. The forest was my will, my anger, my pain. It closed around them, the fog so thick they couldn't see their own hands. The whisper came again, louder, a chorus now. The forest keeps what it takes. It echoed in their skulls, in their blood. Hours passed, or minutes. Time doesn't work right here. When the fog finally lifted, they were at the forest's edge, huddled together, their clothes torn, their faces pale. Searchers found them at dawn, trembling, their eyes wide and unblinking. They didn't speak, not then, not ever again about what they saw. But their eyes, those pale, ghostly white eyes, told the story. They'd seen what I'd seen, the noose, the hate, the moment life became something else. I'm still here, watching from the shadows. The forest keeps me, and I keep it. Every rustle, every snap of a twig is me. Every whisper in the fog is my voice. If you come to Bass Lake, If you step into these woods, you'll hear it too. The forest keeps what it takes. And when you see my eyes glowing through the mist, you'll know you're already mine. Story 6. The Hollow Beyond the Pines. I was 16 when I first saw the Hollow, a place that shouldn't exist, a scar in the earth that seemed to breathe with a malice all its own. My name is Elias, and I lived in a small village at the edge of a vast pine forest in northern Sweden, where the winters were long and the summers fleeting. My brother Soren was 2 years younger, all wiry limbs and boundless curiosity. We were inseparable, often wandering the woods together, chasing the fleeting light of dusk or hunting for mushrooms among the roots. That day, though, we strayed too far. The forest had always felt alive, its shadows dancing with the wind, its floor a carpet of needles that muffled our steps. But as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of amber, we noticed the trees thinning. The air grew heavy, not with the crisp bite of pine, but with something sour, like damp earth left too long in shadow. Soren stopped, his breath visible in the cooling air. "Elias, do you hear that?" he whispered. I strained my ears. The forest was silent. No birds, no rustling leaves, not even the distant howl of a wolf. It was as if the world had paused, holding its breath. "It's just the wind dying down," I said, though I didn't believe it. My skin prickled, and I tugged at Soren's sleeve. "Let's head back." But Soren, stubborn as ever, pointed ahead. "There's a clearing. Let's see it before we go." Against my better judgment, I followed. The trees parted, and we stepped into a place that felt wrong, like a wound in the forest's heart. It was a valley, oval and unnaturally smooth, as if carved by some giant hand. The ground was bare, not a blade of grass or a single pine needle, just gray, powdery earth that clung to our boots like ash. At the center stood a single tree, its bark peeled away, leaving it bone-white and skeletal. Beneath it, a mound rose, jagged with what looked like broken branches. But as we drew closer, my stomach twisted. They weren't branches, they were bones. Hundreds, maybe thousands, piled haphazardly, gleaming dully in the fading light. Among them, half buried, was a human skull, its empty sockets staring up at us. Soren gasped, stepping back. "Elias, what is this place?" "I don't know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The air was thick, pressing against my chest, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the faint crunch of our steps. "We need to leave. Now." We turned, but the forest seemed different. The trees denser, their shapes unfamiliar. The path we'd taken was gone, swallowed by shadows. My heart thudded as I grabbed Soren's hand, pulling him toward where I thought the village lay. But after what felt like hours, the same valley opened before us again, the bone-white tree looming like a sentinel. My mouth went dry. "This isn't possible," I muttered. Soren's eyes were wide, his face pale. "We're going in circles." I shook my head, refusing to believe it. "We'll try again. Stay close." We walked, faster this time, keeping the setting sun to our left, hoping it would guide us. The air grew colder, the light dimmer, and a faint mist began to rise from the ground, curling around our ankles like tendrils. It was thin at first, barely noticeable, but it thickened with every step, clinging to our legs, slowing us. My boots felt heavy, as if the mist itself was pulling me down. "Elias," Soren said, his voice trembling. "It's moving." I looked down. The mist wasn't just rising, it was shifting, pooling in strange patterns, swirling as if alive. It climbed higher, wrapping around my knees, cold as ice. My breath caught, and I felt a chill seep into my bones, not from the cold, but from something deeper, something that made my skin crawl. "Keep moving," I said, my voice sharp. "Don't stop." We pushed forward, but the valley appeared again, its bone-strewn heart mocking us. The mist was thicker now, waist-high, and it moved with purpose, tugging at my legs like hands. I heard a sound then, a low, hollow moan, not from Soren or me, but from the valley itself. It came from everywhere and nowhere, vibrating through the ground, making my teeth ache. Soren stumbled, his foot catching on something beneath the mist. He fell, crying out, and I dropped to my knees beside him. My hands brushed against the ground, and I froze. Beneath the ash-like soil, I felt something smooth and hard, a bone, long and thin, like a femur. I yanked my hand back, heart pounding. "Get up," I said, pulling Soren to his feet. His face was ashen, his eyes fixed on the mist, which now pulsed faintly, as if breathing. Above us, a single bird, a hawk maybe, cried out, its scream sharp and fleeting. Then, silence. The sound cut off so abruptly it felt like the air itself had swallowed it. My blood ran cold. "Soren, we can't stay here," I said, my voice shaking. "This place, it's wrong." We ran, or tried to. The mist clung to us, heavy and suffocating, slowing our steps. It was up to our chests now, and I could barely see the ground. The valley's edge was nowhere in sight, but I glimpsed a faint glow ahead, the last of the sunset, a thin line of red against the gray. "There!" I shouted, pointing. "That's our way out." We staggered toward it, the mist, now a living thing, wrapping around us, pulling us back. My legs burned, my lungs ached, but I kept my eyes on that red glow. The moan grew louder, a deep, guttural sound that seemed to come from the earth itself. I glanced back, and my heart stopped. The mist behind us was rising higher, forming shapes, vague, human-like forms that shimmered and dissolved. They didn't move, but I felt their eyes, or the lack of them, watching us. Soren was crying now, his breath hitching. "Elias, they're following us." "Don't look," I said, though I could barely keep my own eyes forward. The red glow was closer now, but the mist was at our necks, cold and grasping. My skin felt like it was crawling, as if the mist was seeping into me, draining something vital. I grabbed Soren's hand tighter, dragging him with me. The ground sloped upward, and I realized we were climbing, nearing the valley's rim. The moan became a wail, sharp and piercing, like 1,000 voices crying out at once. The mist surged, wrapping around my face, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred, the red sky fading to gray. I felt Soren's hand slip from mine, and panic seized me. "Soren!" I screamed, my voice muffled by the fog. "I'm here," he called, his voice faint, as if from a distance. I reached out blindly, my fingers brushing his sleeve, and pulled him close. The ground leveled out, and the mist thinned just enough for me to see the edge of the valley, the forest beyond it. The red sky was fading, but it was still there, a beacon of hope. With a final burst of strength, I lunged forward, dragging Soren with me. We stumbled over the rim, collapsing onto the pine needles of the forest floor. The mist stopped at the valley's edge, as if bound by some invisible barrier. It churned and writhed, but it didn't follow. The wail faded, replaced by the familiar rustle of the forest, the distant call of an owl. I lay there gasping, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. Soren was beside me, his chest heaving, his eyes wide with terror. "What was that place?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The valley was still there, just beyond the trees, its mist swirling in the darkness. I knew we'd escaped, but I felt it watching us, waiting. We scrambled to our feet and ran, the forest closing around us, its shadows comforting now compared to the hollow we'd left behind. We never spoke of it again, not to each other, not to anyone, but sometimes, at night, I'd wake with the taste of ash in my mouth, the echo of that wail in my ears. The forest was vast, and we avoided its deepest parts after that day. But I knew the hollow was still there, hidden among the pines, its bones and mist waiting for someone else to wander too far. Story 7, Creatures in the Fog, by Colin M. Drysdale. The fog came without warning, a suffocating shroud that swallowed the forest whole. I'd been with the group, 7 of us left after the attack on our camp, when it rolled in, gray and heavy, curling through the trees like smoke from a dying fire. The air grew thick, damp, clinging to my skin. I could barely see my hand in front of my face, let alone the others. The grayness swirled around me, so thick it felt like I could reach out and grab it, twist it in my fingers like wet cloth. Somewhere nearby, Ellie's voice called out, sharp and panicked, "Stay close! Don't lose each other!" But her words were muffled, swallowed by the haze. We'd been running since dawn, ever since the creatures hit our camp. They weren't human anymore, not really. Monstrous things with jagged teeth and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. Their bodies twisted by whatever infection had spread through the world. They'd torn through our tents, shredding canvas and flesh alike. We'd lost Marco and Lila in the chaos, their screams still echoing in my skull as we fled. Now, the fog had trapped us in this primeval forest, a maze of gnarled roots and splintered branches that seemed to shift and writhe in the gloom. The forest floor was a traitor, littered with fallen limbs and rotting trunks that snagged my boots. Every step was a gamble, each crunch underfoot a potential signal to the things hunting us. I gripped the splintered stick I'd picked up, a pathetic weapon, but better than nothing. My heart pounded, a drum beat in my chest as I strained to hear the others. Footsteps thudded somewhere to my left, heavy and uneven. "Ellie?" I hissed, my voice barely a whisper. No answer. Just the relentless drip of moisture from the trees and the faint, distant scream of someone, or something, lost the fog. I stumbled forward, arms outstretched, feeling my way through the murk. The air was cold, biting through my torn jacket, but sweat still beaded on my forehead. The forest was alive with sounds now, snaps of twigs, rustles in the underbrush, and low, guttural grunts that could have been the creatures or just my imagination twisting the wind. I didn't know which was worse. My foot caught on a root, and I pitched forward, catching myself on a tree trunk, the bark rough under my palms. For a moment, I froze, listening. The footsteps were closer now, deliberate, stalking. I tightened my grip on the stick, my knuckles whitening. A shape loomed in the fog, a dark blur against the gray. My breath caught, and I swung the stick hard, aiming for where I thought a head might be. A yelp, human, not monster, stopped me mid-swing. "It's me, damn it!" hissed Tom, his voice shaking. His face materialized pale and streaked with dirt, his eyes wide with terror. "You nearly took my head off." "Sorry," I muttered, lowering the stick. My hands trembled. "Thought you were one of them." "They're out there," he whispered, his gaze darting into the fog. I heard them, grunting, moving fast. "Where's Ellie?" "The others?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I don't know. Got separated when the fog got thicker." He wiped a hand across his face, smearing mud. "We need to keep moving. Standing still's a death sentence." He was right. In fog like this, running was no longer an option. Too risky, with the ground ready to trip us and the haze hiding friend from foe. But stopping was out of the question, too. The creatures were relentless, their hunger driving them through the forest like wolves. We'd seen what they did to those they caught, flesh torn, bones snapped, bodies left as empty husks. I nodded at Tom, and we crept forward, shoulder to shoulder, our steps cautious. The fog seemed to pulse, thickening in waves, then thinning just enough to tease us with glimpses of twisted branches or fleeting shadows. Each flicker of movement spiked my pulse. Was that a tree? A creature? A friend? The uncertainty gnawed at me worse than the cold. Somewhere ahead, a scream tore through the haze, sharp and human, then cut off abruptly. My stomach twisted. That could have been Ellie, or Sam, or any of the others. I wanted to call out to find them, but opening my mouth felt like inviting death. Tom grabbed my arm, his fingers digging in. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. His breath was hot against my ear. I nodded, straining to listen. Footsteps again, but not human. These were heavy, uneven, accompanied by a low, wet growl that made my skin crawl. They were close, too close. "Go," I hissed, shoving Tom forward. We stumbled through the fog, branches clawing at our clothes, the ground sucking at our boots. The growls followed, multiplying, coming from all sides now. The creatures were circling, their footsteps a chaotic rhythm in the haze. We broke into a clearing, or what felt like one. The trees seemed to part, the air slightly less oppressive. I could just make out Tom's silhouette beside me, his chest heaving. "We can't keep running blind," he panted. "We need to find the others. Make a stand." "Make a stand with what?" I snapped, holding up my stick. "This? Against those things?" He didn't answer. A new sound cut through the fog, a voice, faint but recognizable. "Help. Please." It was Ellie, her words choked with fear. I spun toward the sound, my heart lurching. She was alive. Somewhere in this nightmare, she was alive. "Ellie," I called, forgetting caution. My voice echoed, swallowed by the fog. Tom grabbed my shoulder, his eyes warning me to shut up. But it was too late. The growls grew louder, closer, a chorus of hunger. I cursed myself, gripping the stick tighter. "There!" Tom pointed into the haze, where a figure staggered toward us. It was Ellie, her jacket torn, blood streaking her face. She limped, clutching her side. "They're coming!" she gasped as she reached us. "Sam's gone. They got him." Before I could respond, a shape lunged from the fog. A creature, its eyes glowing like embers, its mouth gaping with jagged teeth. I swung my stick, catching it across the jaw. It staggered, but didn't fall, its growl turning to a snarl. Tom tackled it, driving his shoulder into its chest, sending it crashing into a tree. "Run!" he shouted. We bolted, Ellie stumbling between us, her breath ragged. The fog seemed to thicken with every step, wrapping us tighter in its grip. The creatures were everywhere now, their grunts and footsteps a constant threat. I couldn't tell how many there were, 5, 10, more. The forest itself felt like it was conspiring against us. The fog a living thing that hid our hunters and muffled our cries. We hit a slope, sliding down into a gully where the fog was even denser. My boots sank into mud, slowing me down. Ellie tripped, and I hauled her up, her weight heavy against my arm. "Keep going," I urged, my voice hoarse. But the growls were closing in, the creatures moving faster than we could in this blinding haze. A new scream pierced the air, not Ellie's, not Tom's. Another survivor? I couldn't tell. It was followed by a sickening crunch, then silence. My chest tightened. We were being picked off, one by one, the fog hiding the carnage. I swung my stick blindly at a shadow, hitting nothing but air. Panic clawed at me, the urge to run warring with the fear of crashing into something or someone worse. "We need to climb," Tom said suddenly, pointing to a faint outline of rocks jutting from the slope. "Get above the fog. See where we are?" It was a desperate plan, but we had nothing else. We scrambled up the rocks, Ellie slipping, me pulling her along. The growls followed, but the creatures seemed to hesitate, their footsteps faltering below. Maybe the climb was too steep for them, or maybe they were toying with us, savoring the hunt. My muscles burned, my lungs screaming for air, but we kept going until the fog began to thin, the gray veil parting just enough to reveal the tops of trees and a sliver of sky. We collapsed on a rocky ledge, gasping. The fog still clung below, a sea of gray hiding the forest floor. For a moment, I thought we'd escaped. Then I heard it, a low, guttural grunt, closer than I expected. My head snapped around, searching the haze. A shape moved just beyond the ledge, its eyes glinting through the fog. Another joined it, then another. They were climbing, their claws scraping against stone. "Tom," I whispered, my voice trembling. He followed my gaze, his face paling. Ellie gripped my hand, her fingers cold. We were trapped, the bog below us a death sentence, the creatures above us closing in. I raised my stick, knowing it was useless against their numbers. The fog swirled, hiding them for a moment, then parting to reveal their grotesque forms, teeth bared, eyes burning with hunger. I swung as the first one lunged, my stick cracking against its skull. It fell, but another took its place, and another. Tom shouted, fighting beside me, but the fog was our enemy as much as the creatures, hiding their numbers, their movements. Ellie screamed as one grabbed her leg, dragging her toward the edge. I dove after her, prying its claws free, but more were coming, their growls deafening. The fog closed in again, thicker than ever, swallowing us whole. I couldn't see Tom, couldn't see Ellie, only heard their cries mingling with the creature's snarls. My stick slipped from my hands, lost in the haze. I swung my fists, hitting flesh, not knowing if it was friend or foe. The world was gray, endless, a nightmare without end. And then a sharp pain in my side, a wet crunch, and the fog turned black. Story 8. The Hitotsume-Kozou of the Misty Forest. I am Takashi, a hunter from a small village nestled at the edge of a fog-choked forest in Japan. The mist has always clung to our woods like a jealous lover, curling around the trees, swallowing paths, and muffling the world beyond. The elders say it's alive, that it hides things that don't belong to the daylight. They speak of the Hitotsume-Kozou, a one-eyed spirit, a trickster who steals trinkets and toys with those foolish enough to wander too deep. I never believed in such tales, not until the autumn, when the fog grew thicker and our village began to unravel. It started with small things, a comb missing from a windowsill, a child's toy gone from the yard, a polished stone, cherished by old man Haru, vanished from his doorstep. At first, we blamed careless hands or petty thieves. But the losses multiplied, and no footprints ever marked the damp earth. The village buzzed with unease. My neighbor Hannah swore she saw something move in the fog one night. A shadow too small to be a man, too quick to be a beast. I laughed it off, but her eyes were wide, her hands trembling as she clutched her shawl. "We've angered something," she whispered. "The forest is watching." I didn't want to believe her, but the air felt heavier each day, the fog thicker, as if it were pressing against our homes, testing our resolve. By the time old lady Yuki's heirloom necklace disappeared, a jade pendant her grandmother swore held her family's luck, the village was on edge. The elders gathered in the square, their voices low, their faces carved with worry. They spoke of the Hitotsume-Kozou, how it wasn't dangerous, not truly, but its pranks could drive a village mad. I listened, leaning against a post, my bow slung over my shoulder. Stories, I thought, just stories to scare children. But the next night, I saw it too. I was checking traps near the forest edge when the fog rolled in, sudden and suffocating. It swallowed the stars, the moon, the very path beneath my feet. I froze, my breath loud in the silence. Then I heard it, a giggle, sharp and childlike, cutting through the mist. My heart stuttered. I gripped my bow, scanning the gray veil. Something moved, a flicker of shadow darting between the trees, too fast, too small. My pulse thundered in my ears, but I told myself it was a fox, a trick of the light. Still, my feet carried me home faster than I cared to admit. The next morning, my hunting knife was gone. Not mislaid, not dropped, gone. It had been on my table, its leather sheath worn from years of use. Now the table was bare. I searched every corner of my hut, my frustration boiling into something sharper, something like fear. That was when I decided enough was enough. If something was out there, I'd find it. I'd face it. I gathered 2 friends, Kenta and Rin, both hunters like me, both skeptical, but loyal. Kenta was broad-shouldered, his laugh usually louder than his sense, but even he looked uneasy as we stood at the forest's edge. Rin, sharp-eyed and quiet, checked her quiver with a frown. The fog was waiting for us, thick and gray, curling like smoke over the undergrowth. We stepped inside, and the world vanished behind us. The forest was silent, unnaturally so. No birds sang, no leaves rustled. The air was damp, clinging to my skin, and every step felt like wading through a dream. We moved slowly, arrows knocked, eyes straining through the mist. Shadows flickered at the edges of my vision, gone when I turned to look. Rin whispered that she heard footsteps, light and pattering, but when we stopped, there was nothing. Just the fog and the trees, their gnarled branches reaching like claws. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt slippery in that place. The fog grew denser, pressing against my chest, making each breath a labor. Kenta cursed under his breath, his knuckles white around his bow. Rin's eyes darted, her usual calm fraying. Then we heard it again, that giggle, high and mocking, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. My skin prickled. I spun, arrow drawn, and caught a glimpse of something. A shape, small and hunched, slipping behind a tree. I shouted, my voice swallowed by the mist, and we gave chase. The forest seemed to shift around us, paths twisting, trees looming where none had been before. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The shape darted ahead, always just out of reach, its laughter taunting us. Finally, we stumbled into a clearing, the fog parting like a curtain. There, perched on a low branch, was the Hitotsume-Kozou. It was smaller than I'd imagined, no taller than a child, its body wrapped in tattered cloth. Its single eye, huge and gleaming, stared straight at me, unblinking, like a moon in its skull. Its mouth curled into a sly grin, revealing sharp, uneven teeth. My bow trembled in my hands, but I couldn't move. Kenta swore, his arrow clattering to the ground. Rin stood frozen, her breath hitching. The creature tilted its head, studying us, then let out a cackle that sent birds exploding from the trees. Before I could react, it leaped from the branch and vanished into the fog. We stood there, hearts pounding, the silence heavier than before. Kenta wanted to go after it, but Rin grabbed his arm, her voice shaking. "We saw it, Takashi. It's real. We can't fight that." I wanted to argue, to cling to reason, but the memory of that eye burned in my mind. We turned back, the forest letting us go as if it had grown bored of us. When we reached the village, we were met with wide eyes and hushed questions. The elders nodded grimly as if they'd expected this. The thefts stopped for a few days, and I dared to hope it was over. But the forest wasn't done with us. The mist clung to the village now, creeping into the streets, curling under doors. Crops began to wither, their leaves curling black as if burned. Livestock grew sick, their eyes dull, their bodies wasting away. Hana's youngest son fell ill, his fever burning through the night. Whispers turned to panic. The Hitotsume-Kozou was no longer just a thief. It was a harbinger. I couldn't sit idle. I went back to the forest alone, my bow slung across my back, a knife strapped to my belt. The fog was thicker than ever, the air so heavy it felt like drowning. I called out to the creature, my voice hoarse, demanding it show itself. The laughter came again, closer this time, circling me. I spun, my knife flashing, but there was nothing, just the fog and that infernal giggle. Then I saw it, two eyes, not one, glowing red through the mist. Not the Hitotsume-Kozou, something else, something worse. My blood ran cold. I backed away, my knife useless in my hand. The eyes vanished, but the air grew heavier, the forest darker. I stumbled back to the village, my heart hammering. The elders were waiting, their faces pale. They spoke of an older legend, one buried beneath the tales of the Hitotsume-Kozou. A darker force, a demon of despair that fed on fear and imbalance. Our meddling, my chasing the spirit, had woken it. I didn't sleep that night. The fog pressed against my windows, and I swore I heard footsteps outside, slow and deliberate. The next day, more crops failed. Another child fell ill. The village was unraveling, and I was to blame. I had to fix this. I gathered Kenta and Rin again, though their eyes were haunted now, their trust in me fraying. We ventured back into the forest, deeper than before, where the trees grew so close they blocked the sky. The fog was alive now, swirling, whispering. Shadows moved, not just at the edges, but all around us. The giggle of the Hitotsume-Kozou was gone, replaced by a low guttural hum that vibrated in my bones. We found the clearing again, but it was different, darker, the air thick with the stench of decay. The Hitotsume-Kozou appeared, but it wasn't grinning. Its eye was wide, frantic, darting to the shadows. It pointed a trembling finger into the fog, where those red eyes glowed again, closer now, unblinking. Rin screamed. Kenta fired an arrow, but it sank into the mist, useless. I grabbed their arms, dragging them back as the eyes moved closer, the hum growing louder, shaking the ground. We ran, the forest twisting around us, branches snagging our clothes, roots tripping our feet. The village was a blur when we reached it, Our breaths ragged, our faces pale. The fog followed us, thicker now, swallowing the houses, the square, everything. That night, the village was silent, but the air was wrong. I stood guard at my door, my bow in hand, watching the mist. The red eyes appeared again, just beyond the fence, watching, waiting. I don't know what it wants, but I know it's not the Hitotsume-Kozou. That creature was a warning, a trickster trying to keep us away. We didn't listen, and now something else is here. Something that doesn't steal trinkets or giggle in the dark. Something that hungers. I don't know if we can stop it, but tomorrow I'll go back. I have to. The forest is calling, and I can't turn away. Story 9. The Gray in the Mist. The road stretched endlessly before me, a ribbon of asphalt swallowed by the night. My headlights carved weak tunnels through the dark, barely illuminating the dense woods that flanked the highway. It was past midnight, and I'd been driving for hours, the hum of the engine lulling me into a dangerous daze. My eyelids grew heavy, drooping against my will. I shook my head, cranked the window down, and let the cold air slap my face. It wasn't enough. The last thing I remember was the car drifting, tires crunching gravel, and then the world tilted violently. A jolt snapped me awake. My forehead throbbed where it had kissed the steering wheel. The car was still, its hood crumpled against a tree, headlights flickering like dying stars. Beyond the cracked windshield, the world was smothered in fog, thick, white, and unnaturally heavy, like a cloud had sunk to the earth. I stumbled out, my legs shaky, my breath clouding in the frigid air. The forest was silent, but not the kind of silence you'd expect. It hummed, a low, resonant drone that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. My skin prickled. Something was wrong with this place. I called out, my voice muffled by the mist. "Hello? Anyone there?" No answer, just that eerie hum, pulsing like a heartbeat. My phone was dead, screen black, no signal even before the crash. I grabbed my jacket from the passenger seat and started walking, hoping to find the road again. The fog clung to me, damp and cold, curling around my ankles like it had weight. Trees loomed out of the mist, their branches twisted into shapes that looked almost human in the dim light. I kept moving, but the forest felt like it was shifting, the path behind me vanishing as soon as I took a step. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. My heart pounded, my breath ragged, panic clawed at my chest. Then a figure emerged from the fog. A man in a ranger's uniform, his face weathered but kind. He introduced himself as Tucker, his voice calm but edged with something I couldn't place. "You're lucky I found you," he said, his eyes scanning the mist. "This ain't a normal fog. Locals call it the Gray. It's different. Likes to mess with folks." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. Mess with folks? It's just fog. Tucker's smile didn't reach his eyes. "It's alive, son. It plays games, pulls people deep into these woods and doesn't let go easy. I've seen it before." He gestured for me to follow. "Stick with me. I'll get you out." His words sent a chill down my spine, but I followed. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the ground, making my teeth ache. Tucker moved with purpose, his flashlight cutting through the fog in thin, useless beams. The mist seemed to pulse, rippling like water disturbed by a stone. I glanced back, and my stomach dropped. The path we'd taken was gone, swallowed by a wall of white. "Keep moving," Tucker said, his voice tight. "It's watching." I wanted to ask what he meant, but the air felt heavier, pressing against my chest. The hum surged, a low growl that made the trees tremble. Tucker froze, his flashlight shaking in his hand. "Run," he whispered. Then louder, "Run!" I bolted, my boots slipping on damp leaves. Tucker was right behind me, shouting directions, left, right, straight ahead. The fog moved with us, tendrils snaking between the trees, curling around branches like fingers. I felt it brush my skin, cold and slick, like it was tasting me. The hum became a roar, and I swear I heard something else. Whispers, faint and unintelligible, woven into the sound. We ran until my lungs burned, the forest a blur of shadows and mist. Something cracked to my left. A sharp snap like a breaking branch. I turned, but there was nothing. Just the fog, swirling faster now, almost hurting us. Tucker grabbed my arm, yanking me forward. "Don't look at it," he hissed. "It wants you to." My legs screamed, but I kept running, driven by the terror in his voice. The fog thickened, closing in like a living thing. It wasn't just mist anymore. It was a presence, heavy and malevolent, pressing us deeper into the woods. I felt it slide across my neck, cold as ice, and I stumbled, nearly falling. Tucker hauled me up, his grip bruising. "We're close," he panted. "There's a clearing ahead. Keep going." But the forest had other plans. We hit a wall of bracken, a tangle of thorns and vines that rose like a barricade. Tucker cursed, spinning around. The fog had formed a cylinder around us, a swirling, impenetrable cage. The hum was deafening now, shaking the ground, rattling my bones. I saw shapes in the mist, vague, humanoid outlines that flickered and vanished when I tried to focus. My heart hammered. "What do we do?" I gasped. Tucker's face was pale, his eyes wide with something close to resignation. "It's playing with us," he said, his voice barely audible over the hum. "It likes the chase, but there's a way out. There's always a way out." He scanned the fog, his jaw tight. "When it opens, you run. Don't stop. Don't look back. You hear me?" Before I could answer, the fog above us parted, revealing a sliver of starry sky. The hum spiked, a scream that tore through my skull. Tucker shoved me toward the gap, his hands rough. "Go!" he roared. I staggered forward, the mist coiling around my legs, trying to pull me back. I felt it, cold, deliberate, alive, grabbing at my ankles, my arms, my throat. Behind me, Tucker screamed, a sound of pure agony that cut off abruptly. The fog slammed shut like a door, and I was thrown forward, tumbling onto cold, wet grass. The hum stopped. The air was clear, the stars bright overhead. I was out. I lay there, gasping, my body shaking. The woods were silent now, no trace of the fog or the hum, just the night, cold and still. I stumbled to my feet and limped back toward the road, my car a crumpled wreck in the distance. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Tucker's scream echoed in my head, and his words burned into my memory. It likes the chase. Days later, I tried to make sense of it. I searched for Tucker, for any record of a ranger by that name. Nothing. No one at the local station had heard of him, and the woods were just woods, no mention of any gray. But I'd know what I saw, what I felt. That mist wasn't natural. It was alive, and it wanted me. Tucker saved me, but at what cost? I see his face every time I close my eyes, hear his scream in the quiet moments. I don't drive at night anymore, and I'll never go near those woods again. The gray is still out there, waiting, hunting, and I know I only escaped because it let me. Story 10, The Haunting of Willow Creek, My name is Elias, and I'm not sure why I'm writing this down. Maybe it's to make sense of what happened, or maybe it's a warning for anyone foolish enough to follow the same path I did. All I know is that Willow Creek isn't just a story, it's real and it's hungry. I've seen things in that valley that I can't unsee, felt things that still crawl under my skin. If you're reading this, stay away from that place. I mean it. It started 2 years ago, when I was 23, chasing ghost stories for a podcast I ran with a couple of friends. We called it Edge of Nowhere, a show about abandoned places and the legends they leave behind. Willow Creek was just another pin on our map, a forgotten town in the Pacific Northwest, swallowed by fog and rumors. The internet had scraps about it, a hamlet that burned to the ground in the 1800s, its people vanishing overnight. Some said it was a fire, others a curse. The creepiest detail was that no one could find the town anymore, like the forest had claimed it entirely. That was enough to hook me. I wanted to be the one to find it, to walk its ruins and record the truth. I packed light. A backpack with my recorder, a flashlight, a map, and a cheap drone to scout the dense woods. My friends couldn't make the trip, so I went alone, driving 6 hours from Seattle to a trailhead near the valley. The air was damp when I arrived, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. The pines loomed like silent giants, their tops lost in a gray haze that never seemed to clear. I parked near a rusted sign that read Willow Creek Trail, 3 miles. It was barely legible, half buried in moss. I should have taken that as a sign, but I was too stubborn to turn back. The trail was overgrown, barely a path at all. Thorns snagged my jacket, and the ground squelched under my boots. I kept my recorder on, narrating as I went. October 12th, 2023. Elias Reed, hiking into Willow Creek. The fog's thick. Visibility's maybe 20 feet. It's quiet out here. Too quiet. My voice sounded small against the stillness. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of my steps. I figured the silence was just the forest, but it felt like the world was holding its breath. About an hour in, I found the first strange thing. A stone marker, weathered and cracked, half sunk in the dirt. It had no words, just a crude carving of an eye, wide and unblinking. I ran my fingers over it, feeling the grooves. It didn't look natural, like someone had carved it with purpose. I snapped a photo and kept moving, but the image of that eye stuck with me like it was watching me go. The deeper I went, the thicker the fog grew. My map was useless. The trail twisted in ways that didn't match the lines I'd studied. I launched the drone, hoping to get a bird's eye view, but the feed came back static, just gray noise. I cursed and tucked it away, relying on my compass instead. That's when I noticed it. The needle was spinning lazily, like it couldn't decide on north. I shook it, tapped it, but it kept drifting. My stomach twisted. I wasn't just lost. It was like the forest didn't want me to find my way. By late afternoon, I stumbled on something that made my heart stop. A crumbling chimney, blackened by soot, jutting from the earth like a broken bone. I'd found Willow Creek, or what was left of it. The ruins were scattered, half buried under vines and moss. Foundations of houses, their edges softened by time, formed a rough street. I stepped carefully, my boots sinking into the damp earth. The air here was colder, sharper, like stepping into a freezer. I turned on my recorder again. I'm standing in what's left of Willow Creek. There's something off here. It's too still. I can't explain it, but it feels like I'm not alone. That's when I heard it. A whisper, faint and fleeting, like a voice carried on the wind. I froze, straining to listen. It came again, soft but distinct, words I couldn't make out. I spun around, scanning the fog, but there was nothing. Just trees and ruins. My pulse hammered in my ears. "Hello?" I called, my voice cracking. No answer, but the air seemed to tighten, like the forest was closing in. I told myself it was my imagination, but I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on me, hidden just beyond sight. I explored further, finding more ruins. A collapsed barn, a well choked with roots, a rusted iron gate leading nowhere. Every step felt heavier, like the valley was pressing down on me. Then I saw the lights, faint, pale orbs flickering among the trees. They weren't bright, more like candle flames, but they moved, drifting in and out of the fog. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light, but they were still there, hovering near a shattered wall. I raised my flashlight, but its beam didn't touch them. They just floated, silent and wrong. I should have left then. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I was too stubborn, too obsessed with getting answers. I set up my recorder on a stone, hoping to catch the whispers. For 10 minutes, I sat in the cold, listening to nothing but my own breathing. When I played it back, motivate myself to leave, I didn't know what I was dealing with, but I knew Willow Creek wasn't just a ghost story. It was something else, something that didn't want me there. I grabbed my gear and started back, my legs shaking as I moved. The fog seemed thicker now, the trees closer, like the forest was alive, guiding me deeper instead of out. My compass was still useless, spinning wildly. I tried to retrace my steps, but the path was gone, replaced by a maze of roots and shadows. Then I heard the footsteps, soft at first, like someone walking just behind me. I stopped, holding my breath, and they stopped too. I turned, shining my flashlight into the fog, but there was nothing, just the endless gray. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice swallowed by the mist. No answer, but the footsteps started again when I moved, always just out of sight. My heart pounded so hard I thought it had burst. I broke into a run, branches snagging at my clothes, the cold air burning my lungs. The footsteps kept pace, never closer, never farther, like they were hurting me. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes, hours. It all blurred together. The fog never lifted, and the trees seemed to shift, closing off paths I swore I'd seen moments before. I stumbled into a clearing and saw it. The eye-carved stone from earlier, sitting in the dirt like it had been waiting for me. I hadn't circled back. I couldn't have. The valley was playing tricks, bending space to trap me. My phone had no signal, my drone was dead, and my flashlight was dimming. I was alone, or so I thought. The whispers came back, louder now, a chorus of voices weaving through the trees. They weren't words anymore, just sounds, low, guttural, like something ancient and angry. The lights returned too, circling the clearing, brighter, closer. I backed against the stone, clutching my knife, though it felt useless. The air grew so cold my breath fogged, and my skin prickled with the certainty that I wasn't alone. Something was watching, not human, not alive, but there. I felt it in the weight of the air, the way the shadows seemed to lean toward me. I don't remember deciding to move, but my legs carried me forward, sprinting through the fog, the whispers chasing me, the footsteps pounding in my ears. I tripped, fell, scrambled up, and kept going. The lights followed, darting through the trees, faster now, like they were done playing. I don't know how I found the trailhead, But suddenly, I was there, collapsing against my car, fumbling with the keys. I drove until the fog thinned, until the whispers faded, until I could breathe again. I never went back to Willow Creek. I deleted the podcast, burned my notes, and tried to forget, but I can't. At night, I hear the whispers, faint but there, like they've followed me home. Sometimes I see a flicker of light in the corner of my eye, gone when I turn. I don't sleep much anymore. Willow Creek isn't just a place, it's alive, and it remembers me. If you're reading this, don't go looking for it. It's still out there, waiting. Story 11. Dance of the White Women. The fog clung to the Montferland woods like a shroud, thick and gray, swallowing the moonlight whole. My name is Gert van Beek, a farmer with calloused hands and a stubborn streak wider than the fields I tend. I'd heard the tales, whispers of the Vita Viven, the white women, spectral figures that haunted these ancient trees. They were just stories, I told myself, the kind spun to scare children or keep fools from wandering too far from home. But tonight, as I trudged through the mist, the air felt wrong, heavy, like it was watching me. I'd been at the tavern in Zaydam, not drinking, mind you. My head was clear as the noon sky, but I'd stayed too long, arguing with a blacksmith over the price of a new plow. He'd grabbed my arm as I turned to leave, his eyes sharp with something like fear. Gert, the fog's thick tonight. The white women are out there. Wait till dawn. I laughed, a loud barking sound that echoed off the tavern walls. Ghosts? I'll dance with them before I fear them, I said, shaking off his grip. I wasn't one to cower at shadows. So I stepped into the night, the door creaking shut behind me. The path through the woods was a shortcut I'd taken 100 times. It cut through the heart of Montferland, where the oaks grew gnarled and the ground sank into soft, uneven hollows. The fog was thicker than I'd expected, curling around my boots like a living thing. My lantern barely pierced it, its weak glow swallowed by the gray. I walked faster, the crunch of leaves underfoot the only sound, or so I thought. A whisper broke the silence. Not words, not exactly, just a soft, lilting hum like wind through reeds. I stopped, my breath catching. The lantern flickered, though there was no breeze. "Who's there?" I called, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. No answer, just that hum growing louder, weaving through the trees. I shook my head, muttering to myself, "Just the wind, Gert. Keep walking." But the hum didn't fade. It grew, splitting into 3 distinct tones, harmonizing in a way that made my skin prickle. I swung the lantern around, peering into the fog. That's when I saw them. 3 shapes, faint at first, like smudges of moonlight. They were tall, their outlines shimmering, draped in flowing white that seemed to glow from within. The Vita Viven. My heart thudded, but I squared my shoulders. Stories, I reminded myself, just stories. "Who are you?" I demanded, stepping closer. The figures didn't move, but the humming stopped, leaving a silence that pressed against my ears. Up close, they were almost human, slender, with long hair that floated as if underwater. Their faces were blurred like reflections in a rippling pond, but their eyes were sharp, glinting like polished stone. I should have run. I know that now. But something in me, pride maybe or sheer stupidity, pushed me forward. "If you're the white women," I said, my voice steady despite the chill creeping up my spine, "then dance with me." I grabbed the nearest one's arm. Her skin was cold like frost on iron, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she moved, her body swaying as if caught in a current. The other two joined her, their movements fluid, synchronized. The hum returned, low and rhythmic, and before I knew it, I was moving too. My feet followed theirs, stepping in time to a beat I couldn't hear, but felt in my bones. It was almost beautiful, the way we spun through the fog, the lantern swinging wildly in my hand. But then it changed. The rhythm quickened, the hum rising to a fevered pitch. The woman's grip tightened, her fingers digging into my arm like claws. I tried to pull back, but my legs wouldn't stop. They moved on their own, faster, jerking me into a frantic twirl. "Let go!" I shouted, but my voice was swallowed by the fog. The other two figures closed in, their hands brushing my shoulders, my back, each touch like a spark of ice. The world spun, trees, fog, moonlight blurring into a dizzying whirl. My chest burned, my breath coming in gasps. I stumbled, but they held me up, forcing me to keep pace. Their faces were clearer now, or maybe I was just losing my mind. They weren't blurred anymore. They were sharp, too sharp, with hollow cheeks and eyes that bored into me. Their mouths curved into smiles, but there was no warmth in them, just hunger. I don't know how long we danced. Minutes, hours. Time melted into the fog. My legs screamed. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I tried to scream, to beg, but my throat was raw, my voice gone. The white women didn't tire. They spun faster, their white robes flaring like flames, their hands inescapable. I saw flashes, my farm, my wife's face, the tavern's dim light, but they slipped away, drowned in the endless whirl. The ground shifted beneath me, roots nagging at my boots. I fell, or thought I did, but they pulled me back into the dance. My body wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs, a puppet jerked by invisible strings. The humming was deafening now, a chorus of voices that weren't human, weren't anything I could name. My vision darkened, the edges closing in. I was drowning in fog, in cold, in the relentless rhythm of their dance. When the first light of dawn broke through the trees, I was on the ground, tangled in roots like a fly in a web. My body was still, but inside it felt like I was still spinning, my heart racing to a beat that wouldn't stop. The white women were gone, or maybe they'd never been there at all, but I felt their eyes on me even as the fog began to lift. I tried to stand, but my legs were led. My hands clawed at the dirt, desperate to pull myself free. That's when I heard the voices, real ones this time, townsfolk calling my name. They found me, their faces pale as they cut the roots away. "Gert," one of them whispered, "what happened to you?" I couldn't answer. My mouth moved, but no sound came out. My body twitched, my feet tapping against the ground as if still caught in that cursed dance. They carried me back to Zidane, the world swaying around me. My heart kept pounding too fast, too hard. I saw their faces, my neighbors, my friends, but they blurred just like the white women's had. The rhythm was still in me, pulsing through my veins. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop moving. By the time they laid me on my bed, my body was shaking, my breath coming in shallow gasps. I felt the cold of their hands again, the white women, even though I was miles from the woods. My feet twitched, my fingers curled, as if they were still spinning me through the fog. The townsfolk watched, helpless as I danced without moving, my body locked in a rhythm I couldn't break. The last thing I saw was the ceiling of my home, the beams blurring as my vision faded. My heart gave one final shuddering beat, and then nothing. But even now, as I tell you this, I feel it. The hum, the cold grip, the endless frenzied dance. Somewhere in the Montferland woods, the white women are waiting, and I'm still dancing with them. Story 12. Notes in the Mist. I was 16 when the fog came for me. Our house sat at the edge of a sprawling forest, a creaking relic of a home my mother and I had moved to after Dad left. The woods were dense, old, and always seemed to hum with a quiet menace, but I'd grown used to it. That evening, I was tasked with fetching firewood from the shed, a rickety structure half swallowed by the tree line. The air was crisp, the kind that bites your knuckles, and dusk was settling fast. I slung my jacket over my shoulder and trudged out, the crunch of gravel under my boots the only sound in the stillness. By the time I reached the shed, a strange fog had rolled in, thick and silver, like liquid metal pooling in the air. It wasn't the usual wispy mist that clung to the ground. This was heavy, opaque, swallowing everything beyond a few feet. The shed's outline blurred as I stacked logs in my arms, and when I turned to head back, the world had vanished. The trees, the path, even the faint glow of our house's porch light, gone. It was just me, the fog, and the weight of the firewood. I took a step, then another, trying to retrace my path. The crunch of leaves replaced gravel, and I realized I'd wandered off the trail. The fog pressed closer, muffling sound, making my breath feel trapped in my chest. I shifted the logs, my arms aching, and called out, "Mom!" My voice didn't carry. It fell flat, absorbed by the mist. I tried again, louder, but the silence mocked me. That's when I walked straight into a tree. The logs tumbled from my arms, scattering into the underbrush. Pain flared across my forehead, and I touched it expecting blood, but my fingers came away clean. My heart started to race, a dull thud in my ears. I spun around, trying to spot anything familiar, a fence post, the shed, anything, but the fog was a wall. I was lost, utterly, in a place I'd walked 100 times. That's when I saw it, a flicker of pink pinned to a pine tree a few steps away. I squinted, my pulse still hammering, and stumbled toward it. It was a scrap of paper, no bigger than my hand, with a bold green arrow pointing right. My first thought was, Mom. She knew I was out here. Maybe she'd left it as a marker. It didn't make sense. She'd never done anything like that before, but I clung to the idea like a lifeline. Shivering, I started walking in the direction of the arrow. The Fog Union System. UR Grok, 3 built by XAI. The fog grew thicker as I went, curling around the trees like smoke. Another pink note appeared, nailed to a gnarled oak, its green arrow pointing left. I followed it, my boots slipping on wet leaves, my breath hitching with every step. The cold seeped into my bones, and the silence was unnatural, like the forest was holding its breath. More notes appeared, each one pinned to a tree, each arrow urging me deeper into the woods. They were rough, torn at the edges, the green ink smudged as if written in haste. I didn't question it. I just kept moving, driven by the desperate hope of finding my way out. For nearly an hour, I stumbled through the mist, following the trail of paper. The arrows grew sharper, more jagged, like they were angry. My legs burned, and my jacket clung to my skin, soaked with damp. I was shaking now, not just from the cold, but from a growing dread I couldn't name. The fog seemed to pulse, alive, pressing against me like a living thing. I reached a steep bank, the ground sloping sharply into darkness. At the top, another note was pinned to a tree, but this one was different. In bold green letters it read, J-A-C-O-B, my name. My blood froze. Every hair on my body stood on end, and the air grew heavy, like it was trying to choke me. I felt it then, a breath hot and sharp on the back of my neck. I spun around, but there was nothing, just the endless fog. A snap cracked behind me, loud as a gunshot. Panic surged, and I bolted, tearing through the underbrush. Branches clawed at my face, my arms, drawing blood this time. The fog swirled, and I swore I heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate, just out of sight. My lungs burned, my vision blurred with rain and sweat, but I kept running, the notes forgotten, driven by raw terror. Finally, the trees thinned, and a faint glow pierced the mist, the porch light. I burst out of the woods, my legs giving out as I hit the gravel path. I scrambled to the door, fumbled the lock, and threw myself inside. I slammed the door shut, my hands trembling so badly I could barely turn the bolt. Mom found me curled up on the floor, gasping, my face scratched and bleeding. She thought it was a nightmare, a panic attack from getting lost. I tried to explain, the fog, the notes, my name, but she just hugged me, her voice soft, telling me to rest. I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the memory of that breath on my neck looping in my mind. The next day, I went back to the woods, determined to prove it wasn't a dream. The fog was gone, the air clear, but I found nothing. No pink notes, no arrows, no sign of my frantic path. The forest was just a forest again, silent and ordinary. I almost believed I'd imagined it. That night, I stayed at a friend's house in town, too shaken to face the woods again. Mom stayed home, working by the fire as she always did, her knitting needles clicking in the quiet. She told me later what happened, her voice trembling in a way I'd never heard before. It started with a tap on the window, soft at first, like a branch brushing the glass. She ignored it, thinking it was the wind. Then it came again, sharper, deliberate. A rock hit the pane, then another crack in the glass. She froze, staring out into the dark, where the forest loomed like a wall. Then she saw it, her own face, pale and grinning, staring back from behind a tree. It wasn't her, of System UR Grok 3 built by XAI. Of course, it couldn't be, but it wore her features, twisted into a manic smile, its eyes too wide, too bright. The figure chattered silently, its lips moving in a mockery of speech, then pointed at her and laughed. Mom dropped her knitting, her heart in her throat, and ran to the phone. But the line was dead. The tapping turned to crashing, rocks smashing through the windows, glass shattering across the floor. She fled upstairs, locking herself in the bedroom, but the noise followed, relentless, like the house was under siege. She waited, crouched in the dark, until the crashing stopped. Silence fell, heavier than the fog. She crept to the window, her hands shaking, and looked out. Two figures stood in the yard, framed by the broken glass of the downstairs windows. One was small, pale, with that horrible grin. The other was tall, shadowy, its form indistinct, but massive, radiating menace. They stared up at her, unmoving, their eyes glinting in the moonlight. Mom didn't wait to see more. She grabbed her keys, ran to the car, and sped down the gravel road, her breath ragged, her hands white on the wheel. In the rearview mirror, she saw them standing there, watching, until the house disappeared from view. We never went back. The house still stands, or so I've heard, empty and waiting, shrouded in fog that never seems to lift. I don't know what was in those woods, what wrote my name on that note, or what wore my mother's face. But I know it wasn't human. I feel it sometimes, even now, years later, a breath on my neck, a flicker of pink in the corner of my eye. The woods are still out there, and whatever lives in them is waiting, patient as the mist.